The mountain made a circle of itself for the hunt. Pines stood like pillars, their black arms stitched with frost, and the sky lowered a red coin onto the rim of the world. Wolves from 3 packs ringed the clearing in bands of color, red veils rust cloaks, grey wind slate, lakeholds deep blue, each with their elders, their blades, their hungers. Drums kept a heartbeat the earth pretended was its own. Mara stood at the eastern edge beside Etta and tried not to braid her fear into the air. Kale came last, without crown or cloak, only a black mantle pinned by a wolf's tooth and a sword that had learned his hands long ago. When he entered the circle, the drums softened. Sound obeyed him here, even if men didn't. Etta touched Mara's wrist, 2 fingers on the mark. Breathe. In, hold, out. Remember, the fire is yours. It sits when you say. Mara nodded. Her breath fogged and dissolved. She could feel eyes like hooks in her back, red veils tore and grinning as if he'd already won a bet. Sarah of Grey Wind wearing politeness like a blade, strangers whose names she'd never know rehearsing how to tell this story if she died. An elder from the lakehold stepped to the center stone, a flat disk of granite carved with old spirals. His voice carried like winter across water. Witnessed by 3. Bound by mountain. The hunt begins. Trial 1, Circle of Breath. The candidate enters the spiral. She will cross its turns with flame under order. No overreach, no starve. Any fire that leaves her skin unbidden, failure. Any flame that dies because fear owns it, failure. Sarah smiled with her eyes. Control is safety, little spark. Mara stepped forward anyway. The spiral waited, pale lines cut into dark stone. At the first turn, cold rushed up her ankles. She lifted her palm, thinking absurdly of the tavern's hearth, of coaxing stubborn kindling on a wet morning. Sit, she whispered to the heat under her ribs, not as a command but as a reminder. The mark stirred. A silver glow gathered in her palm the size of a coin. She took 3 steps. The light held. A 4th step. The wind found her throat, testing it. The glow wavered. She counted the way Etta had taught. In, hold, out. The flame steadied, not larger, not smaller. A murmur moved the circle, even doubt has to breathe. At the second turn the spiral narrowed. The stone pressed at her balance, the drums thin to a thread you could cut with a breath. From the watching ring, Torrent's voice carried just enough. A barmaid walking a line. What could go wrong? Noise is a kind of hand, it tried to shove her. She did not let it. Sit, she said again, to the fire, to her fear, to the memory of every door that had closed on her. The glow obeyed. Halfway. The spiral kinked tighter. A gust shouldered through the pines, the flame pecked at her skin, eager to flee, eager to bloom. Mara felt the choice in it like a bitten lip, run or root. With me, she breathed, and the heat curled like a hounded heel. 3 more steps. 2. 1. She reached the stone's center and stood very still while the world remembered how to do the same. Then, because pride is as dangerous as panic, she turned and walked the spiral back out without looking up, without listening for anyone's relief. When her boot kissed earth beyond the cut lines, the drums answered with a single hard strike, acknowledged. Murmurs swung a different way. Sarah's smile thinned. Etta didn't clap. She squeezed Mara's wrist once, approval sly as a coin slipped under a door. Good, she said. Breath listens. The lakehold elder raised his hand. Trial 2, the unbinding. A tether of shadow will be sent. She will unmake it without flame touching anything but itself. Any scorch on ground or skin, failure. A boy in blue, no older than Mara when her mother burned, stepped forward with a bowl of dark water. He dipped his hand and lifted a thread of night from it like ribbon. It writhed in the air, sleek, cunning, looking for a throat. Mara's stomach turned. She knew that hunger. It had worn other shapes. Do not meet it like a wall, Etta said. Meet it like a seam. I'll mend, Mara said, and believed her mouth just enough. The shadow leapt. Her palm lit, not as a blade but as a needle. A slender filament of silver unspooled from her wrist and wound the black thread in 3 coils. The thing twisted, trying to teach the air how to choke. She did not pull. She tucked. She whispered, "Sit," and the light made a knot around the dark the way her mother's hands had tied off bread at dawn. The thread shivered and went slack. The bowl darkened and then cleared like stormwater, remembering it was a lake. The boy exhaled a sound that might someday grow into a whoop. Sarah's voice arrived like frost. "Neat. But tricks won't save a pack." Cale looked at Sarah the way cliffs look at weather that boasts. "Truth does." Torrance spat into the pine needles. Trial 3, he called before any elder could, loud enough to taste like leadership. "The chase. She runs. We send 3. If they draw her blood, she fails." "That is not the order," the Lakehold elder began. "Let him hurry to see her fall," Etta murmured. "It makes the lesson cleaner." Cale's jaw set. He did not argue. He stepped to Mara and put his hand on her shoulder like men do when they want to build a roof. "Run where the trees are thickest. Use the ground. Use your breath. Call if," he stopped, as if the word "if" had stepped between them. "Call." She nodded. The drums woke again, quick now, hungry. A horn cut the air. Mara ran. The forest received her like a story it already knew. Roots tried to catch her, she leapt. Branches clawed, she slid. Breath became a staccato prayer. Behind, 3 shapes broke from the circle, wolves in manskin running low, fast, one red veil heavy with muscle, one grey wind lean and long, one in Lakehold blue moving like a rumor. The first sprinted reckless, trying to close with noise and size. Mara let him. At the last instant she cut right, vaulted a fallen fir, and breathed a thin ribbon of light across the moss behind her. He hit it, stumbled, swore, learned humility. The second did not blunder. He paced her through trunks and shadow, feet silent, eyes patient. Twice he slid left when she fainted, twice he did not bite. On the third feint she made no fourth, she went up instead, grabbing a low branch, swinging her body over the hunter's head, landing behind him with knees that remembered how to be useful. He spun, too late. She flicked a stitch of light around his ankle and pinned him to a root for a heartbeat, long enough to put 5 more between them. The third disappeared. Silence has teeth. It waited for her at a shallow ravine where the snowmelt talked to itself. She jumped, it jumped with her, claws kissed her shoulder just enough to be named. Heat flashed in her palm without asking. "No," she hissed. Not to the man behind, to the fire within, and the glow sucked back like a tide. She rolled, took the slope on her hip, slid to the creek bed in a spatter of cold. The grey wind runner was already there, grinning like a kind teacher. He reached for her arm with a hand that promised to be gentle. She let him touch her wrist, then closed her fingers around his and whispered, "Sit." The mark lit soft, the man's muscles forgot their plan for a half-breath. She slipped free and climbed the opposite bank with mud on her knees and laughter in the back of her mouth that never made it out. The drums changed. The circle was close again. The pines opened. She broke back into the clearing breathless and whole, shoulder throbbing but unbroken skin. The 3 hunters arrived behind her one by one, chests heaving, pride altered. The Lakehold elder lifted both palms. The candidate returns unwounded. Trial 3 stands. Murmur became sound. Sound almost became cheer. Torrance' mouth shaped a snarl that wanted to be a smile and failed both tasks. Cale's eyes found Mara and did a dangerous, quiet thing. He did not touch her in front of them. He didn't have to. The circle could feel the gravity between 2 bodies that had decided not to be planets anymore. The elder raised his voice. "Final tonight, witnesses question. One voice from the gathered may ask what binds her. What answer she gives binds her." Sarah stepped into the ring as if she'd been carved for it. "I ask," she said, cutting off Torrance inhale. Slate eyes on Mara, steady, soft as razors. What do you serve, flame-bearer? Crown? Pack? Prophecy? Or yourself? The drum stopped. Mara felt the mark warm. Felt 100 wants elbowing for space. Felt the old urge to be what was safest. She looked at Etta. At the boy with the bowl. At the 3 runners, each reconsidering something. She looked at Cale last, and saw not a crown, but a man who had chosen and would be killed for it. She lifted her chin. I serve choice, she said, voice carrying like fire through dry pine. Mine. Theirs. The choice to live without a leash tied to fear. I serve the breath that sits when it's told and rises when it must. The stone under her feet hummed. The mountain, impolite and honest, approved. Sarah's mouth did not move. Her eyes did. She inclined her head by the width of a lie. Bound, the elder said, and the word threaded itself into the circle like a vow that would not forget. A wind slid the pines. Somewhere a wolf answered it without asking permission. Mara let out the breath she'd been saving. Etta smiled with half her face. Cale finally allowed himself the smallest curve of his mouth and then killed it for safety. The drums began again, slower, done. Men reached for flasks, women for judgments. The hunt had started, and she had not been eaten. At the far tree line, where the night had been content to be night, 2 eyes opened, pale as bone dust catching moon. They blinked once. Not gold. Not silver. Not pack. Mara felt the mark seize. The eyes didn't move. They measured. And then they were gone, as if the dark had learned a new way to say soon. The hunt did not sleep. Even after the drums quieted, the clearing hummed with the restless breath of wolves and men alike. Fire sparked along the circle's edge, tents pitched by packs that did not trust the mountain enough to close their eyes. The red moon hung swollen, heavy, unblinking. Mara sat near the embers of Cale's fire, knees drawn to her chest, Etta's staff propped against her shoulder. Her muscles ached from the chase, her throat raw from breath and fear. Yet her mark still glowed faintly, pulsing with her heartbeat, a reminder that rest was never simple. Across the fire, Cale watched her without speaking. He had stripped his mantle, his shirt clinging with sweat and blood not his own. Golden eyes caught the light as though they belonged to the flames themselves. He had not asked if she was well. He did not need to. He watched, and the question lived in him anyway. Etta broke the silence first, tapping ash into the dirt. The hunt isn't finished. They'll test you until dawn. The moon demands proof until it tires of watching. Mara's stomach nodded. What's left? The worst, Etta said plainly. Yourself. Before Mara could ask, a horn cut the air, low, drawn, full of weight. Wolves rose from their fires. Elders gathered at the stone again, cloaks whispering like tired storms. Sarah's slate gaze found Mara through the haze of smoke, a smile curving her mouth as if she already knew the ending. The lake-hold elder raised both hands. The final trial before the hunt's judgment, moonlight's measure. The candidate will stand under the full gaze of the blood moon. Her fire will rise unbidden. If she cannot master it, if it spills beyond her, then prophecy claims her, not us. Gasps carried. Torin laughed once, sharp as an axe splitting wood. At last, the flame will show its true hunger. Cale's blade was half drawn before Etta's staff barred him back. No steel, she whispered. Not yet. Let her burn if she must. Mara's legs shook as she walked to the stone. She hated how small she felt, how every step sounded like surrender. The elders spread in a circle, their shadows stretching long across the clearing. The moonlight fell heavy as iron, bathing the stone in red. The mark on her wrist blazed alive before she reached the center. Heat surged through her veins, uncoiling with glee. Silver fire licked her skin, growing, swelling, demanding to be seen. Mara clenched her fists. Sit, she whispered, but the fire laughed. The moon called, and it wanted to answer. Flames spilled from her shoulders, curling upward, painting her in silver and scarlet. Gasps rippled. The air grew hot, wolves backing away from the heat. Her hair lifted in the glow, her skin alight like glass holding a storm. Fear clawed her ribs. I can't stop it. I'll burn them all. Kale's voice cut through the chaos, calm, low, commanding. Mara. Look at me. Her eyes found his across the firelit dark. His stare held steady, gold against silver. He did not flinch, did not fear. You decide, he said. Not the moon. Not prophecy. You. Her breath hitched. She shut her eyes, drew in air the way Etta had taught, in. Hold. Out. She opened her hand and whispered, sit. The fire fought. For a moment, it rose higher, lashing against her skin. But her will dug in, pulling it tighter, smaller, bending it inward. Sparks collapsed into a single glow, then into nothing but the steady pulse beneath her skin. Silence. When she opened her eyes, the fire was gone. Only the mark on her wrist remained, faintly silver, faintly hers. The circle erupted. Wolves cried out in disbelief, elders argued, tore and spat curses into the dirt. But no shadow leapt. No wardstone cracked. She stood alive, her fire bound to her breath. Etta's staff struck stone once. The moon measured her, she said. And she chose her weight. Kale stepped forward, eyes locked on Mara, his voice carrying like a vow. The trial's end. Tomorrow, judgment. Tonight, she has proven. Mara's knees wobbled, but her spine held. For the first time, she believed she might not only survive the hunt, she might redefine it. But as the pack scattered into argument, Sarah lingered by the wardstone, her fingers brushing the crack where black had once seeped. Her lips curved into a whisper Mara barely caught. She can bind herself all she wants, Sarah murmured. But prophecy doesn't end with choice. The mark on Mara's wrist pulsed hard, hot, as if agreeing. And in the distant tree line, pale eyes blinked open once more. The clearing did not sleep. Even after the moonlight trial, wolves lingered in knots, their whispers sharp enough to cut. Some spoke of awe, some of fear, but all of them spoke of Mara. Her name moved through the crowd like fire through dry grass, uninvited, unstoppable. Mara sat at the edge of Kale's fire, heart still thudding from the heat that had nearly consumed her. She rubbed her wrist, where the mark now pulsed faint silver, faint defiance. I controlled it, she thought. I chose. But the memory of Sarah's whisper gnawed, prophecy doesn't end with choice. Kale had been silent since, but his silence was never absence, it was wait. He stood now, his shadow long in the firelight, and every gaze was drawn to him as though the mountain itself tilted toward his voice. Enough, Kale said, low but cutting. The pack stilled. You've seen her trials. You've seen her fire. And you've seen she bends it to her will, not yours. Torrin barked a laugh. And yet it burns. The day will come when she lights more than wardstones, when she burns you. Mara flinched, but Kale's gaze didn't waver. He stepped into the center of the clearing, gold eyes sweeping the circle of elders, envoys, and wolves. His voice deepened into something ancient, something a crown borrows when it needs to remind the world who wears it. I will not wait for the day you fear, Kale said. I will not leave her a question to be passed from pack to pack like a poisoned cup. His hand lifted, not to a sword, but to Mara. I claim her now, before moon, before mountain, before all. Gasps cracked through the crowd. The word was louder than steel. Claim. Mara's stomach dropped. Mate bond. He's declaring the bond. Sarah's smile returned, sharp as slate. You would bind the flame bearer to your side, Alpha? You would wed prophecy to your crown? Kale didn't blink. I would. Because prophecy is not a leash. It is a burden. And I choose to carry it with her, not against her. Mara's breath caught. The fire in her veins stirred, not wild, not hungry, warm. She rose, slowly, the clearing watching every tremor in her body. Kale, she whispered, her voice shaking like glass. If you bind yourself to me, they'll hate you. They'll never forgive it. They already hate me, he said softly, meant only for her. But they will learn to kneel. Edda's staff struck the earth once, a sound like thunder sealed in wood. So it is spoken, she said. The Alpha declares his mate. The moon will witness. The crowd fractured, shouts, protests, curses. Torrent spat into the dirt, his face twisted with fury. Madness! You would crown a witch's daughter beside you? Kale's eyes cut to him, cold and final. I would crown Mara. Flame-bearer, barmaid, woman who chose her fire when fear begged her not to. Call her what you like. She is mine. Silence followed. The kind of silence that tastes like surrender. Mara's heart thundered, her skin hot. The fire inside her pressed against her ribs, but for once, it wasn't demanding freedom. It was demanding closeness. She stepped into the circle, until she stood before him, until the world could see what choice meant. Then I choose too, she said. Her voice carried, fragile but unbroken. Not as your burden. Not as your curse. As your mate. The blood moon spilled its light over them, red and silver together. The packs gasped, some in awe, some in rage, but none could look away. Kale took her hand, lifted it, and pressed his lips to the mark on her wrist. The fire surged, spilling through her veins and into his, gold and silver weaving together. The air crackled. Wolves bowed their heads against the weight of it. The moonbinding had begun. The mountain itself seemed to hush. Even the wind caught its breath as Kale held Mara's hand aloft beneath the blood moon. Gold fire curled faintly in his veins, silver light shimmered beneath her skin, and where they touched the glow mingled, two flames testing how to burn as one. The packs ringed the clearing, torn between awe and outrage. Some wolves bowed instinctively, spines bent beneath a weight older than law. Others growled low, unwilling to bend to anything but fear. Edda's staff struck the stone 3 times. The moonbinding is declared, she intoned, her voice carrying like iron through smoke. It is choice, witnessed. It is fire, carried together. Speak, and be bound. Kale turned to Mara. For the first time, his voice softened, stripped of command. Mara. Do you choose me? Not crown, not pack, me. Her throat tightened. The poor barmaid who once hid behind tavern smoke wanted to vanish. But the flame-bearer, the woman who had held fire in her hands and lived, raised her chin. I choose you. Not for protection. Not for power. For the man who stood before a council and claimed me when I could not claim myself. The silver glow flared at her words, licking across her wrist and winding up her arm like a living vow. Kale's eyes blazed brighter, molten gold. Then before moon, before mountain, before all who watch, I bind myself to you. Not as master. Not as jailer. As equal. As mate. He pressed his palm against hers. Gold and silver fire erupted, twining into a crown of light above them. Gasps rippled through the circle. The packs had seen mate bonds before, but none like this, none that bent prophecy into something chosen. Mara's heart raced. She felt him, truly felt him, in her bones, in her blood, his strength spilling into her veins, her fire flooding into his. A tether pulled taut between them, unbreakable, undeniable. The glow rose higher, spiraling around them until the blood moon itself seemed to bow, its red light softened by their silver-gold blaze. Edda raised her staff. Bound by choice. Bound by fire. Alpha and Flame-bearer, mated beneath the moon. So witnessed. So carried. The light burst outward in a wave. Wolves dropped to their knees, some willingly, some forced by instinct older than rebellion. The earth groaned, the ward stone pulsed, its cracks sealed in radiant silver. Kale lowered his forehead to Mara's, his voice barely a whisper. Yours. Her lips trembled, but the word came, certain as flame. Yours. The packs roared, some in celebration, some in fury. Tore and shouted curses into the dirt. Sarah's slate eyes gleamed with calculation, her smile too sharp to be joy. But none could deny what they had witnessed. The Alpha King had bound himself to a barmaid, a witch's daughter, a flame-bearer. And the mountain had answered. Mara stood taller than she ever had, hand in Kale's, fire quiet at her command. For the first time in her life, she belonged, not because she was claimed, but because she chose to claim in return. The blood moon bathed them both, sealing their vow. But far beyond the circle, deep in the valley's dark, pale eyes watched. Dozens. Hundreds. Not wolf. Not man. Waiting. The mate bond had been sealed. The prophecy had shifted. And the true Alpha had yet to rise. For one breath after the moonbinding, the world held. Gold and silver hovered in the air like pollen, wolves bowed by instinct they didn't dare name, and the mountain seemed briefly satisfied that two stubborn fires had decided to share a hearth. Then the temperature dropped. Torches guttered all around the ring, flames pulled thin by a cold that had no business in summer. The wardstone's sealed crack exhaled a thread of white mist, no steam, no smoke, something older, drier, hungrier. Edda's head snapped toward it. Back. Kale moved first. He pulled Mara gently behind his shoulder as he faced the stone, every line of him ready to spend itself. Archers on the wall, he called, voice iron. Shields up. Hold. The white mist split. Not smoke, fur. A muzzle pushed through the stone as if granite were pond water. Then another. Then 5. Eyes opened, pale, chalk bright, wrong. Not gold. Not silver. Bone light. Pale wolves, someone breathed. The name felt like a draft under a door. They poured from the wardstone in a silent rush, lean as famine, their coats the color of grave dust. Where they stepped, frost rimed the flagstones, where they glanced, torches failed. No pack scent. No sound. Only purpose. Circle. Kale roared. Guards locked shields. Elders backed toward the fires that still dared to burn. Torrent of red veil drew steel with a grin too sharp to be courage. Sarah of Grey Wind smiled like someone who had bet on rain and seen clouds. The first pale wolf lunged at a shield wall, passed through wood like cold through bone, and came out the other side, leaving frost and terror. The captain behind it staggered as his breath fogged and fell in shards. No blood. Too clean. Too wrong. Mara felt the pull, raw, insistent, as if the creatures were hooks cast into the center of her chest. Her mark seared awake. They're here for me, she whispered. Edda's staff wrapped her ankle. They're here to weigh you, the elder hissed. Be heavy. Kale glanced back, golden eyes bright in failing light. With me, he said, not order, not plea. Adjoining. They moved together. A pale wolf swerved toward them, jaws yawning wider than a jaw should, no tongue, no breath, just cold interior. Kale stepped in, blade a flare of angry torchlight. The sword met the thing's neck and hissed, metal frosting, edge chattering. He didn't flinch. He cut again, driving it back into a tangle of spears. Another lunged for Mara. Instinct screamed to blast. She didn't. Small stitches, she told herself. A filament of silver unspooled from her wrist, delicate as hair, bright as noon. She looped it around the pale wolf's foreleg and tucked, not tore. The limb blurred, slowed, remembered it had once belonged to a rule. It stumbled. Kale's blade found it an instant later and turned stumbling into retreat. All around, the yard became a lesson, steel slowing what it could not wound, Mara's light hemming what steel could not hold, Edda's runes barking commands to the stones. Wolves in manskin fought like the mountain watched. Left. Kale snapped, and Mara felt him before she saw, his shoulder brushing hers, his breath steady even now. The bond hummed, gold into silver, silver into gold. When she reached, she felt more than her own heat, his steadiness, his measured rage, the way he set his jaw before he broke a thing. She took it, used it. A pale wolf reared, eyes on her throat. She drew in breath like thread, counted, sat her fire, and cast 2 quick stitches across its chest. It faltered. Cale cut low. They moved again, a hinge that had finally accepted it was a door. Behind, a guard screamed. Too late. A pale wolf slid from the stone itself and clamped on Cale's forearm. He didn't cry out, his face just sharpened, all the softness burned away. Frost raised his skin where its teeth touched, white lines skittering toward his elbow. Mara didn't think. She grabbed the creature's throat with her bare hand. Silver detonated, not a flood, a focused sun. Her palm burned bright, a coin pressed to snow. The pale wolf spasmed, jaws opening. Frost cracked on Cale's arm like a bad idea dropping. He yanked free and finished it with a clean, furious stroke. The thing collapsed into a scatter of powder that tasted like old pennies. He glanced at her hand, at the bright mark searing like a brand. Yours, he said, breathless and sure. Yours, she returned, and wasn't sure which of them she was answering. A horn blew from the wall, once, twice, panic trying to pretend it was warning. Pale wolves had reached the archers. Arrows passed through them and pinned Knight to nothing, not helpful. Sarah's voice cut the yard. Bind the wardstone, she shouted, startling herself by choosing survival. If that door closes, the room breathes. Etta slammed her staff's iron end on the flagstone. Runes flared along the yard seams, a spiderweb waking. Mara, she barked. Seamstress. So. Mara sprinted to the wardstone, heat rippling under her skin, not wild, not tame, listening. Pale wolves slithered around her ankles, trying for purchase. She stepped through them like bad memories. At the crack, she knelt. The stone was cold enough to ache her teeth. Sit, she whispered to the fire. It settled in her hand, precise, fierce. She began to stitch, thin lines of silver laid crosswise over the fissure, top to bottom, left to right, a lattice remembering its job. Each tuck tightened a little hush into the world. Each knot made space for a breath. Pale wolves noticed. They turned as one, oriented like needles to a magnet, and surged at her back. Cale stepped into the gap without being asked. He planted his feet and raised his blade and, just this once, snarled loud enough to be prayer. Come, then, he told them, like a man welcoming debt collectors with fire in the grate. The first 2 hit steel and learned reluctance. The third went for his ribs, he neat, ugly and efficient, and made room for another stitch. Torin joined the line with a curse so sincere it almost counted as loyalty. If we live, he panted, cleaving at air that remembered to be wolf, I still want her gone. Get in line, Cale grunted, cutting for him without looking. Sarah stood at Mara's shoulder, close, unwelcome, necessary, hands out, palms gray with some powder only Grey Wind trusted. Dust, she murmured. Old iron ground to regret. Throw it if they mount. It makes them remember weight. Mara didn't thank her. She stitched. The lattice grew. The crack shrank. The pale wolves faltered, the way a lie falters when a child blinks at it. One last seam. One last knot. Now, Etta breathed. Mara pressed the 2 lines together with her thumb and let the mark on her wrist decide it mattered. The wardstone flared, not white, not black, silver like a promise, gold like a crown. The crack sealed with a sound like a door learning how to close politely. Half the pale wolves vanished, no dramatics, no hell. Gone, as if someone had remembered to wake up. The remaining few hesitated. One lifted its head and looked at Mara in a way that felt like a finger tracing a name on a fogged window. Then it opened a mouth that wasn't quite a mouth and let a voice slide out, flat, distant, cold. Weighing complete. The hair on Mara's arms prickled. By who, she asked, before common sense could clap a hand over her own. No answer. The creature stepped back into the stone and folded like a page. Silence broke all at once. Men shouted inventory, names, wounds, sanity. The air warmed, guiltily. The torches remembered their job and flared. Mara stood, legs trembling. Cale caught her elbow. His forearm was mottled where frost had kissed it, already the gold of his heat chased the white away. He searched her face with that dangerous, careful attention he saved for laws and cliffs. Hurt? She shook her head. He didn't look relieved, he looked like a man recalculating a future. Etta joined them, hair wild, eyes brighter than the staff's runes. They didn't come to kill, she said, spitting the words like gristle. They came to measure. And to leave a message. What message? Torrin snapped, daring breathing to feel clever again. As if answering, the wardstone's surface fogged, and letters etched themselves in frost across the sealed seam, 5 strokes, simple as bone. Not yet. Sarah's smile was gone. Whose words? She whispered. His, Mara said, before the thought reached her mouth. She didn't know how she knew. She knew. Cale's hand tightened fractionally. Whose? Mara lifted her wrist. The mark pulsed once, hard enough to ache. When she spoke, her voice wasn't loud, but the yard leaned to catch it. The alpha who hasn't risen, she said. The one the whispers promised. He's watching. Wind slid the pines like a secret. Somewhere far below, in the valley where moonlight huddled in hollows, pale eyes opened and closed, one, then many, like a constellation deciding its own name. Etta set her staff down gently, as if a louder sound might break something they still needed. Then the hunt isn't the test, she said. It's the invitation. Mara met Cale's gaze. The bond hummed, gold and silver, vow and question. Her hand found his forearm where the frost had been and fit there like a word finally learning its sentence. Let him come, she said, and hated that her voice shook and loved that it didn't matter. Cale's mouth tilted towards something that wasn't quite a smile. He will, he said. But he will find us bound. The wardstone held. The torches steadied. The night, having broken once, began to knit itself back together, thread by stubborn thread. Dawn crept reluctantly over the mountain, a gray smear pushing back the blood-red night. Smoke curled from burned torches, the air sharp with frost that had no place in summer. The courtyard bore the scars of the battle, flagstones cracked, shields rimed with ice, paw prints that melted too slowly. Wolves paced the perimeter, hackles high, as if the shadows might return with the rising sun. Mara stood by the wardstone, staring at the frost-etched words that refused to fade, not yet. Each letter gleamed faintly, as if written by a hand she could not see, as if the stone itself carried memory. Her wrist burned under the mark, a steady throb that echoed the letters. Etta approached, staff tapping against the stone. Her eyes were sharper than dawn, unsoftened by exhaustion. They tested you, she said. And spared you. Spared us, Mara corrected, though her voice shook. She remembered the pale wolf's gaze, the way they had turned as one, the way one had spoken through jaws not made for words. Weighing complete. Etta shook her head. No, girl. Us, they would have feasted on. You, they measured. The packs were backdrop. You were the center. Cale came to her side, arm still bandaged from frostbite, though his movements betrayed no weakness. His presence steadied her, the mate bond humming faintly like a cord stretched taut between them. This wasn't chance, he said. They didn't appear because of prophecy alone. Someone opened the way. His gaze swept the courtyard until it landed on Sarah and Torrin, who lingered at opposite ends of the circle, both wearing masks too neat to trust. Sarah met his stare calmly. You think Greywind plays with such creatures? Wolves without packs? Wolves without hearts? No. They are older than us, Alpha. Older than crowns. And now, they are awake. Torrin spat into the dirt. Convenient that they woke just as you bound yourself to a witch's daughter. Mara's chest tightened. The word hit harder now, after the moonbinding, after feeling Kale's fire braided with hers. She wanted to defend herself, but Kale's hand brushed hers, stopping her. He stepped forward, golden eyes fierce. Careful, Torin. You've already failed to best her. Don't fail to respect her. Murmurs rippled through the watching wolves. Some nodded at Kale's defense, others muttered their doubts. Divisions deepened, cracks spreading as surely as the one that had split the ward stone. Edda lifted her staff, silencing them. Argue later. Listen now. She pointed at the frost words. This is not threat. This is promise. Not yet means soon. And soon does not wait for our politics to finish arguing. The pack shifted uneasily. Even Torin held his tongue. Mara touched the stone, fingertips brushing the cold letters. A shiver darted up her spine. For a moment, the world muted. No wolves, no Kale, no Edda. Just her, the stone, and a voice pressed against her skull like ice against fire. Flamebearer. She gasped, clutching her wrist. The mark seared, silver light bleeding faintly through her sleeve. The hunt was theirs. The war will be mine. Her knees weakened. Kale caught her before she fell, pulling her against him. Mara, what did you hear? She lifted her eyes, wide, haunted. It spoke to me. The one behind them. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He called himself Alpha. A hush fell. Even the wind seemed to still. Edda's face drained of color. The shadow Alpha. Kale's grip tightened. Where? Mara shook her head. Not here. Not yet. But he's watching. Waiting. And when he rises, her voice cracked, fire and fear colliding in her chest. The prophecy won't be about me alone. The frost letters pulsed once, as if agreeing. Then they melted, water dripping into the cracks of the stone. The pack shifted nervously. A howl rose in the valley, carried on morning wind, not wolf, not man. Something else. Something calling. Mara pressed closer to Kale, the bond between them singing with fire and gold. For the first time, she understood, the Moonbinding hadn't ended anything. It had begun the war. The council chamber was chaos. Wolves shouted, elders snapped, and the smoke of 100 torches turned the air thick. Some demanded Mara's banishment, others whispered about prophecy, and all eyes shifted to Kale as though waiting to see if the crown itself would crack. Kale stood tall, his frostbitten arm bandaged, but his presence unbroken. The mate bond hummed gold and silver through him, fire in his veins steadied by hers. He let the shouts rise until they felt unbearable, then he raised his hand. Enough. Silence fell, not because they agreed, but because they obeyed. He looked across the chamber, first at Torin, then at Sarah, then at every elder who had doubted. Last night, the pale wolves came. And when they did, she stood. Not with prophecy. Not with fear. With choice. Mara felt the weight of his words press her forward. Slowly, she rose to her feet, the mark on her wrist glowing faintly. You saw me, she said, voice trembling at first, then growing stronger. You saw me stitch the ward stone. You saw me master my fire. I am not your curse. I am not prophecy's puppet. I am Mara. And I chose him. She reached for Kale's hand. The mate bond flared, silver and gold spilling across the chamber. Wolves flinched, but none could look away. Kale's voice deepened, thunder in his chest. You doubt her because you fear fire. But fire warms as much as it burns. Fire keeps wolves alive through winter. Fire is not your enemy, fear is. And today, I tell you this, the flame bearer is not your doom. She is your future. The mark blazed, filling the chamber with light. The banner stirred as if a wind had remembered its place. Wolves bowed, not all, not willingly, but instinct carried them down. Edda struck her staff to the stone. So it is witnessed. Alpha and flame bearer. Crown and fire. bound by choice. Kale turned to Mara, his voice softer, but it carried all the same. You are no longer prey, Mara. You are mine, as I am yours. And together, we are theirs. Her heart surged. For once, she felt no need to hide, no urge to run. She stood taller, fire steady, crown beside her. Then let them see us as we are. And they did. The chamber erupted, not in fury, but in reluctant awe. Even Torin could not deny the bond, his protest withering in his throat. Sarah of Grey Wind only smiled thinly, but she bowed her head, acknowledging what could not be undone. That night, under the blood moon, the packs knelt in the courtyard. The moonbinding flame burned above Kale and Mara, silver twining with gold, casting warmth instead of fear. Wolves howled, not in division, but in unison, a chorus that shook the mountain. Mara stood at Kale's side, no longer the poor barmaid who once insulted a king. She was flame-bearer, mate, queen in fire and crown. And as dawn broke, the wardstone gleamed whole, its crack sealed forever in silver. The prophecy had not ended with ruin. It had ended with choice. And choice had made them stronger.